We'll turn it over to the Tennessee Titans and the temporary general manager, Turtle.
Are on the clock. Boom.
Again, like I mentioned last time, if I could draft Shiloh Sanders here, I would for this god awful, godforsaken franchise that is the Tennessee Titans. But look, I've gone back and forth in my head with this pick. Last time I picked Cam Ward, I still think it's a quarterback driven league. And I'm very interested to see how some of the pro days shake out. But for the sake of this mock draft and what I've kind of come up with the consensus of a lot of mock drafts that I've seen and some buzz. Look, I think the Titans are probably going to try to trade this pick, but since we're doing this with a lack of trade, so to speak, I'm going to go with Abdul Carter here. And I think it'll depend on the pro days of Cam Ward, and I don't think Shedeur Sanders is going here. We've seen some rumors about him falling down draft boards. I'm going to be curious to see what Abdul Carter's stress fracture situation looks like. But if you're a team like the Tennessee Titans who just needs talent, it doesn't matter where it is. And it seems like based off their quotes, it's kind of what they want to do with this pick. If they don't trade down, I think you take the most talented edge rusher in the draft at a premium position, and Abdul Carter would be my pick this time around.
Yeah.
There are some questions here, though. I wouldn't be surprised if some team tries to trade up or they move out of this pick, hopefully not too far down if I'm the Tennessee Titans. But this is going to be I love drafts like this, and a nice inflection point at 1. But for this sake, I will say Abdul Carter.
Yeah, I still like them to at least take, if not a high-end quarterback, to sign a veteran quarterback. I mean, those are pretty much the only two options. But I would imagine that with Brian Callahan coaching for his job, it's going to be up to them to get a quarterback on that roster that they trust. And if it's not Cam Ward, Abdul Carter is a nice consolation prize.
Yeah. Do we think that Will Levis is just in the Davis Mills category now, to where like they tried him out for like a year or two and he's just going to slide into the backup role?
Yeah, I mean,
it depends. For him.
Yeah, I think guys been mentioning people have been mentioning like Jacoby Brissett getting that job. So maybe some competition for Levis. But I still think under this scenario, he definitely still has a shot to play, shot to bounce back, if you will.
He's got the tools, so it wouldn't hurt trotting him out there, I guess, if you're just, you're the Titans just trying to accumulate talent. I think it's more likely they try to trade out of this pick more than anything, but I like the Will Levis saga. Please trot him out there for another year. I love watching him play.
He's always got something new every week.
Yeah.
So we move to the AFC North and the temporary general manager of the Cleveland Browns, Mr. Mike.
Yeah, so I actually got back-to-back picks in this one. And, assuming the cards are going to fall how they've fallen with Abdul Carter going at 1, I actually have the Browns taking Shedeur Sanders at number 2. I think he fits well. It wouldn't be my pick. I'm thinking as a general manager of the Browns. But I think he fits well with what, Kevin Stefanski's been used to kind of in his career as a, legitimate pocket passer who has a really good arm but can get outside of the pocket and create for himself. There's a lot of pressure to win next season. They need a long-term solution. We've been in the rubble. We've gone over it countless numbers of times. I think he has the traits of a quarterback that fits Kevin Stefanski best. I'm talking about what fits the Browns the best. Not what I want, but what fits the Browns the best. And, excitement to a fan base, it's a way to boost what was the last place scoring offense in the league last year.
Yeah.
And then we follow that up, going from number 2 to dun dun dun.
Wait, you can't just go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, I need some clarification as to why Shedeur got picked over Cam Ward. I kind of get what you're saying there from a scheme fit perspective, because the one thing I will give Shedeur Sanders is he throws with great anticipation. That always seems like something Stefanski and that offense loves. I don't think Cam Ward's got I think Cam Ward has a stronger arm than Shedeur Sanders. But if you're looking for the intangibles of a Stefanski offense. I could see it. So I was curious what your reasoning is, Mike.
Yeah, mine was more so the scheme, trying to get into the minds of what I think, the Browns front office would do. In full disclosure, I would like Cam Ward better. I think his footwork, decision making, and his arm in general are better than Shedeur Sanders. I think Shedeur Sanders is, I think Cam Ward would be a better fit. I'm just thinking about what I think the Browns are going to do, and that is break my heart as always.
Yeah,
I was going to say, you just do the opposite.
Now,
but to your point, this is the cheapest option for them.
Yep.
This is all they really have to their, at their disposal right now at the quarterback position. But I think the most important thing for Stefanski after the year he had with Jameis Winston especially, I think he wants to take care of the ball. And the one thing I'll give Shedeur, I guess, an edge over Cam Ward on is the fact that he takes care of the football. And I think at the end of the day, Stefanski would absolutely yearn for a guy who just doesn't turn the ball over, regardless of, if he's ready to go, if he's ready to compete at a high level. So
I think that's a huge point, Christian. Just with what they've gone through, through the Deshaun Watson experiment, and just, it was turnovers. It wasn't knowing where to go with the ball. It wasn't accurate passes. I think you have someone, and we saw it when he played in college, who's not going to turn the ball over. And that was one of his big keys, on his draft card, is that he doesn't turn the ball over. He has the athleticism to make plays. Like I said, would it be the pick I would do? No, but I think it is what the Browns will do. But coming up at 3 is – those 1, 2, and 3 is where it's going to get very hairy, and it could completely blow up in our faces. Because at 3, if the Browns are taking Shedeur Sanders, pull the rabbit out of the hat, it's Cam Ward. So, you talk about, just 9 touchdown passes, over 4,000 yards last season. What I think is the kind of what makes or breaks them is decision making and footwork. I think those are the two edges that Shedeur Sanders has on Cam Ward right now. I think that's why he falls one position. We haven't seen a team trade up from 3 to 1 since 1975. So I don't think there's going to be a brash decision, but who knows what's going to happen. I think a powerful arm, innovator on the field, and kind of, it's another quarterback who's going to create with their feet, and these are two teams that can't leave the draft without a quarterback. So it's a coin flip at 2 and 3. That's how I think it's going to play out. But I think the two are interchangeable at 2 and 3 in terms of the decisions that the franchises could make.
Well, just interesting. Yeah. I just want to say about that pick, and then going off of the Shedeur pick as well. It's hard to imagine that one team will defy, almost you call it conventional wisdom or whatever, but the conventional wisdom right now is that Cam Ward is the top quarterback in this draft. But you have to imagine that a team, perhaps that Shedeur Sanders indicated he's willing to go to, or maybe forcing his way toward, will prioritize him in this spot. So I think that just to begin with, the Shedeur Sanders pick over Cam Ward was a shocker to me because of everything you said about Cam Ward. The fact that he has the athleticism, the fact that he has the arm. The question is whether he can play on time. And I think as well, to your point about scheme fit, with Shedeur Sanders being something that Kevin Stefanski is more used to, Cam Ward is something that Brian Daboll ideally, I think, is an archetype that he wants to have in his offense, an athletic quarterback, a quarterback that he can scheme for, that he knows he has an athletic edge on the other team. It's what Daniel Jones had going for him. So I have to respect the scheme fit in that sense. And possibly, maybe Cam Ward would be a better fit and more successful with the Giants and Malik Neighbors than he would have if the Browns had taken him at that pick.
And all I'm saying about that pick with taking Shedeur Sanders is that I think it's enough red meat for a trade to happen. And I think we could trade back. They take Shedeur, we take Cam. And I would prefer that. I think it would be, very interesting to get a guy with, rocket arm. But that's the thing. You take the intangibles, then you got to work on footwork and decision making when you take the other quarterback. So I mean, there's pros and cons to each. That's how it fell to me. If we're gonna stay at 2, I don't see anywhere where you're not taking Shedeur Sanders if the Giants aren't going to be willing to trade up.
Sure.
One last point on the quarterbacks. Just overall, it's crazy the premium, the draft capital premium that quarterbacks are at nowadays. I mean, 2017 draft, guys like Deshaun Watson, Clemson Deshaun Watson, Pat Mahomes, even some other drafts, like good quarterbacks aren't going until the middle part of the first type deal. I mean, if these two guys were in last year's draft, I mean, they're not going until like the second round. It's just insane that the premium that the position is nowadays. That teams are willing to take these two guys at 2 and 3 in the draft, so to speak. It's just a nuts observation of mine. Because not too long ago, it wasn't like that.
Yeah.
I mean, and taking a quarterback is kind of a life preserver for some of these coaches too.
Right.
For a year to be able to, a year or two, especially if you're Matt Eberflus, to be able to. Well, I guess he didn't last the full second year, but that was yeah. So that comparison doesn't jive. But for most teams, being able to take quarterback will preserve the life of your head coach or GM going forward. But I think the next team doesn't really have to worry about that quite as much.
Yeah. Wait, can we pause it real quick? One second.
Yeah. All right, so the next team that drafts is not going to have to worry about job security because Mike Vrabel is he's sitting in AC chilling if we were able to do the tier list right now in terms of hot seats. So he kind of has freedom in this pick. Christian, temporary GM of the New England Patriots. Where are the Patriots going with this pick?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this is the toughest decision. With Travis Hunter being here at 4, he's arguably the best player in the draft. But I think New England has already been through this a couple years ago. Mac Jones, when he had success, had a good offensive line, and then when he wasn't successful, he had a really bad offensive line, and they did nothing to kind of help him out or save him his job. So I think it's an obvious pick here. You got to go Will Campbell. They need a left tackle bad. The left side of the offensive line, the entire offensive line is terrible. It's miserable. It's the worst in the league, I think, inarguably. And worst case scenario, I see Will Campbell as a Peter Skoronski type guy, out of like the guy from Tennessee, the left guard, a very capable left guard, very good left guard. But I think at the combine, he checked all the boxes for me. He should be very capable at the left tackle position. And it helps having a guy athletic enough for it not necessarily to matter that the guy might be a little short-armed in Drake May. So I'm going to take Will Campbell here. I know it's a little shocking, but I think it's the right pick. I think for Vrabel, he understands the value in this pick. I'm going to go. I think it's pretty obvious. It's got to be Will Campbell just because of the experience at left tackle. I think he's most ready to go day one.
Christian, I like that pick just based off of, there's a million ways you can go with it. If you talk about Travis Hunter, I would think he would have been, the next up, probably who you were juggling with on that. But you talk about the new regime with Mike Vrabel, you build your success from the trenches. You go take the best tackle in the draft. And I don't think it's a crazy pick at all. I think it also leaves a lot of teams down in the draft to start thinking we may have to. I think that if this is how it plays out, a lot of teams are going to start trading up to be trying to snag off, especially pick 7, 8, 9, and 6, especially. There might be a lot coming down the pipeline if that's the way that the Patriots go.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to address their offensive line one way or the other, whether it's in the free agency or the draft. It's just a position that they're going to spend major resources on. And I love the Will Campbell pick for them. It, as you said, Mike, we could belabor the point about Travis Hunter and what he could bring to a team, but we know also what Will Campbell brings to a team, and it's a elite left guard, ridiculous athlete. When you look at his measurables and his drills at the combine, just moves like better than any offensive lineman since Trent Williams, I think was one.
No, yeah, the crazy stat. I'll give it to you.
Yeah, give me the exact stat, but I know he has a ridiculous.
Since 2003.
Yeah.
Since 2003, guys to be 315 pounds or heavier, jump higher than 30 inches in their vert, and run a sub 540 is Tristan Wirfs, Trent Williams, Will Campbell, and Armand Membao, the other tackle in this class. So,
well, there you go. I mean,
that's a great segue to my pick, and I'm going to shock the world here. Jacksonville, Armand Membou at 5. I thought very heavily about Mason Graham here or Travis Hunter and one of the receivers, but after listening to Gladstone, who looks like he's 14, by the way, like he looks, I think I look older than him. But in any case, after listening to him, he talked a lot about intangibles at the combine and athleticism. And look, the Jacksonville Jaguars are kind of similar to ISC Tennessee. Is I think they're in talent accumulation mode, and I wanted to go Travis Hunter or McMillan just because I think they need another receiver opposite of Brian Thomas, but I think they can address that later in the draft. Really, this was between Membou or Mason Graham for me, but I think that they have to prioritize Trevor Lawrence. And look, tackle might not be the most pressing need for them. I think they've got more needs on the interior offensive line. But maybe you could have Membou play guard or kick somebody in, have Membou play tackle, one way or the other. When it comes from a talent perspective, and you just mentioned that stat, Christian, and I was going to pull that one out of my hat at this pick. But, like you said, Membou is an absolute freak. And I think that when it comes to protecting Trevor Lawrence, all the intangibles and athleticism from a tackle standpoint, Membou checks all the boxes. So maybe the first shocker of the draft here, if Will Campbell doesn't qualify, but I think the Jags go Membou. They give Trevor Lawrence, all the help they can get up front. They're going to protect him. They don't want to see an Azeez Al-Shire situation again with Trevor. So, Membou is my pick there.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, you got to protect the quarterback, right? I mean, and Liam Cohen as offensive coach, you can't run your offense if your quarterback's getting just drilled and injured, which seemingly
also a guy who watched Tristan Wirfs this season.
Exactly.
So I think that it's maybe a little bit outside the box, but I think there's a chance Membou goes at 5 here. Especially after hearing what Gladstone said about Trevor Lawrence and what they need to do to help him. I think this is probably the best way to do it. So,
I mean, if we can move on to my pick, this is just my draft strategy on its head for the Las Vegas Raiders.
It always happens to somebody. It was Mike last time, and now you're the one, Pat.
Yeah, now I'm left to adjust, but do I really need to think about this? I think you have to take arguably the most talented, best player in the draft at Travis Hunter. It could come down to Genty or Hunter at this point, but I think you have to look at the positional value of an elite cornerback, arguably an elite wide receiver. You find a way to play him on both sides. Pete Carroll certainly would not be opposed to just getting the most talented defensive back in the draft, and also being able to use him on offense. I think if anybody's going to authorize getting creative like that and make it work, Pete Carroll's a championship coach who you're going to trust to handle that. I don't think he's going to shy away from Travis Hunter's personality and what he brings to a team. I think I'm not going to overthink this pick, and I'm just going to go with Travis Hunter. They have a need at wide receiver and cornerback. Do you have any debate on that?
Two birds at one stone. No, I think it's a steal at 6. So I had a hard internal discussion at the last pick with Travis Hunter at 5, but I want to think outside the box in mine. And yeah, this is a no-brainer if you're the Raiders.
If this is how it all plays out, you have no other option if you're the Raiders. I think
they're going to look hard at GT, but we'll see.
Yeah.
That would be the only debate I think here if this Hunter, is how it played out early.
Hunter.
Yeah.
So we can move it on to the temporary manager of the New York Jets.
And the Jets they're in a troubled position because with Mason Graham here, you're thinking, who is the best player available at this point? I didn't think he would have made it. But at this point, when you look at the New York Jets roster, to me, the receiver position is so absent of talent. Other than Garrett Wilson, there is no guy that I can see really throwing or catching the ball in New York right now. They don't have a real long-term quarterback in place. So how do you counter that? I think you have to load up on skill position players. So it is really a toss-up between the best offensive player or the best defensive player at this point, at this pick. I'm going to have to go T-Mac here. I think he gives them something different. He gives them another weapon to pair with Garrett. He's a different type of receiver. My comp for him, obviously, I think for a lot of us is probably Drake London, somewhere along those lines. And I think that's a good fit next to Garrett, who you'll probably have to pay soon. You talk about the other successful tandems in the league. Obviously, T. Higgins and Jamar come to mind. And with no quarterback in place, a good running back and a good young running back after him in Braylon Allen, I think they could use a split receiver. So I'm going to take T-Mac here. I know Mason Graham, though, great player. I have pick 7, 8, and 9 here. And let the fall begin for Mason Graham. I'm not taking Mason Graham here because Derek Brown is there. I don't know how much of a mesh that would make, to be honest with you. The one guy who tested crazy is Shamar Stewart. Shout out to Shamar. But my guy, a little shocking here. Roll Tide. Jihad Campbell.
Wow.
You go to the combine. You go to the combine. He tested out like a freak. Doesn't help that his only competition really for that off-ball linebacker spot was Jalen Walker for LB1, if you will. But Jihad had a crazy combine. If you look at the metrics, his comp is Will Anderson. That's the exact type of player they need.
Great player.
I think this is just, as we mentioned in our first mock, Pat, you had this pick. You're just trying to get highest ceiling right here. So Jihad's my guy. I think even as just a regular off-ball linebacker, he'll be a good player. But I think his potential as an edge really puts him up this high.
It's just an interesting thought too. Thinking about a guy like Jalen Walker doesn't test at the combine, right? And now you've got Jihad Campbell who tests out and maxes out his potential draft stock, and now it could lead to a team falling in love with what they saw at the combine. Obviously these guys have their pro days, but it feels like there's a statement that you make when you go to the combine. Teams like that, maybe the Panthers do like Jihad Campbell better than any of these other potential defensive line prospects. It's you can't go chalk in these mock drafts. You have to expect some things are going to be unexpected, and that would be a shocker of a pick. But then again, you could look 5 years in the future and think Jihad Campbell has the potential to be one of the better edge players in the NFL, just based off.
Christian, I was surprised you. I wasn't surprised at the defensive pick, but I mean it was toss up between G.I. Campbell and Michael Williams. I think that was that the internal battle you were fighting at all, or am I way off?
No, honestly, I didn't think Mason Graham was going to make it, based on our last mock, based on how we were all feeling, but it makes sense now. Honestly, I think the Jets, they just needed another weapon. I think if you can choose between a player who touches the ball and scores touchdowns over a guy that doesn't, I think you take the guy who scores touchdowns. And yeah, I mean, it's tough between Mason Graham and T-Mac. I think they're the same tier of players. But I think with Quinnen Williams there, I just don't know how much value Mason brings alongside Quinnen, if that makes sense.
Long story short, there's just a lot of uncertainty with the first, I would just say 10 picks of the draft. Like there's a lot of uncertainty in the top 10. There's going to be some weird stuff that happens, and
right.
You just kind of gotta think about it, and there's going to be up and down movement. Like I think there's going to be numerous trades. Obviously, we're not doing that here, but like you could easily see, like maybe a team trades up to get Mason Graham, somebody moves back down. Like I don't think this fall is to the fault of Mason Graham. It's just kind of,
right.
It's just kind of how it's playing out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I got pick number 9. This is best case scenario for me. If I was New Orleans picking here, I would have never thought it would have happened. But man, Kellen Moore, the season I just had with, the running back, now I get Alvin Kamara and Ashton Jeanty. Holy Christ. We're running the ball all the time, and it's just run, play action, bomb to Shaheed. Run, play action, bomb to Olave. That's all we're going to do this year. Fuaga's in place. Who knows about Ryan Ramczyk at right tackle, but Trevor Penning's still there. Eric McCoy, in my opinion, best center in football when he plays, when he's healthy. Plenty of things to work with on this offensive side of the ball. I think it might hurt the Bears' heart a little bit that Jeanty doesn't make it to 10, maybe. Yeah. But I think with Jeanty and Alvin Kamara, there's a building block at least you have going into 2025. So best case scenario for New Orleans if I'm picking for them right here.
Is there, Christian, do you think there's any chance that a third quarterback like Jackson Dart maybe slots into 9 or something like that? Any just for like Kellen Moore to get a quarterback instead of running it back with Spencer Rattler? Because I know there are some rumblings that the Jets might take Dart at 7. Yeah. He's the guy that's kind of like floated around into being a first round pick. Do you think there's any likelihood there with that possibly happening?
That definitely. I mean, Dart probably had the best combine out of anybody that participated. He tested out well. Those are good ball. I'm not sure. I haven't heard much about Derek Carr. I assume he's gone. But it makes sense that he'd be gone. But even still, I think it makes sense to hold out. And especially, the New Orleans connection to the Manning family, obviously, is a big deal for me. And if I could have any shot at that sweepstakes, I probably would hold out. And I think
Spencer Rattler might win you a couple games if Kamara and Jeanty are
exactly.
Well, Christian, just going off your pick. And I mean, if that's the route that New Orleans were to go, I mean, Justin Fields is out there, and I mean that's a fast offense right there. So there's a lot of dominoes that could fall, but if this is the way that things play out,
yeah, no, that's an interesting fit when you think about it too. With of the quarterbacks, the free agent quarterbacks, the most affordable guy that you'd probably still consider a starter would be Justin Fields. I mean, the fact that some team is going to take a chance on him to give him the reins just based on his athleticism alone and what they can see him put on tape. Maybe Kellen Moore likes it. Kellen Moore's going to look for some answer at quarterback, I think. But the issue with the Saints is he's going to have to be affordable, whatever they do. So whether that's a quarterback in the draft, whether it's waiting until next year, I feel like taking a running back in the top 10 when you already have a great running back doesn't necessarily lend itself to that. But Ashton Jeanty's a blue chip player. He's the last blue chipper left on the board at this point. I would say where in any draft you would consider him probably the best running back available. So, yeah, I can't argue too much with taking him. I would feel like an idiot when you look in the future and he possibly has a Saquon Barkley-esque career just based on his talent alone and his ability to force missed tackles. So, yeah.
Is that the best tandem in the NFL day one?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think you're talking about maybe the most forced missed tackles by a backfield in NFL history at that point.
And you add on Kamara's pass catching ability, depending on who's throwing him the ball, but still.
Yeah, I think they're going to
make like others out there. It would make. And I could see Justin Fields, man, just from a Jalen Hurts light type, similar body types, similar ability to run the football. Justin Fields probably a little bit more athletic, I would say, or maybe even a lot, but just from a skill set perspective, very similar to Hurts. So that would be kind of fun. That would be a scary backfield. Imagine like some pistol sets or like shotgun with Genty and Kamara on the field.
Taysom Hill is on the roster too.
Yeah, Taysom Hill.
Wow, dude.
Oh boy.
On top of it all.
Honestly, that would just be pure entertainment. I'd love that.
Yeah, immediately turn one of the least fun teams into the most fun teams.
The Justin Fields Taysom Hill play packages are going to go nutty.
Yeah, and who knows how far they could go in the NFC South too, just without.
Yeah. It's also the NFC South.
It's also completely open.
Yeah.
It's all possible in the NFC South. Yeah. And speaking of possibilities, I don't see this playing out and being possible for the Bears. But damn, if it does, if Mason Graham is sitting on the board for the Bears at number 10, forget whatever offensive tricks you think that Ben Johnson's getting ready to play. They're going to take the top defensive tackle in the draft and ask questions later in Mason Graham. Gervon Dexter, they drafted him in the second round. He has shown flashes, but I would say he definitely hasn't. Christian is triumphantly raising his arms because we are both Bears fans who have suffered with this pass rush that the Bears have not had. You had a supernova of a second half of last season the previous season, 2023, by Montez Sweat. And since then, you've pretty much had consistently inconsistent, just awful pass rush from the defensive line. And the shame is that it's really overshadowed what is a great secondary that they have and what are solid linebackers. And, it would benefit Tremaine Edmonds to bolster up that pass rush too, probably make his contract look a little better. But if Mason Graham is on the board, you have to take that talent at defensive tackle for a team that has been so devoid of talent on the defensive line, especially on the interior of the defensive line since Akeem Hicks. I mean, Andrew Billings is a zero technique and has shown you some good things, but he's not going to stop you from making this pick at 10. So I think the Bears run up to the podium and take Mason Graham and don't have a second thought about it.
And I also think, Pat, just as you mentioned, if you're getting Mason Graham at the 10th pick of the draft, you are running away with a fat bag. I mean, if he slides out of the top 5, then I think you're stealing.
I could see somebody trading up for him if he fell to 9 or if he fell to one of those later slots. I mean, I don't expect him to fall, but who knows on draft night? I mean, it would be shocking based on how important we've seen great defensive line play to be.
And to that point, I just want to also criticize the fact that there are still organizations in the NFL that care about like thresholds of like arm length, like that really matters. So it's unfortunate that some teams will really not draft a guy if they don't reach those thresholds, and it might happen to Mason Graham like this. This would be the best case scenario for Chicago in my eyes. Maybe outside of landing one of those two tackles that went 4 and 5, but I'd be extremely happy. And honestly, I can see it happen because I could see this play out, definitely.
And I think above that all, the tape is king over all those measurables. And I think that's what you walk away from with that pick.
Yeah. Last point, Braden Fisk, for all these reasons, was picked in the second round. I think if we did a redraft today, he's in the first round every time. So damn the measurables. So yeah.
Yeah. The Bears can't be concerned about measurables. They need a guy who can just straight up play in that position.
And overthink it. Just draft
off all the measurables. That has
I wish NFL teams do it more, but just draft good football players.
Yeah.
I feel like get lost in the sauce sometimes. All right, I think I'm up, right? San Francisco 49ers.
Yep.
I was licking my chops if Mason Graham somehow didn't get picked there at 10, because I was going to slot him right in with the 49ers because I feel like they got a need there. But maybe a little shocking here, but I'm going to go with Jahdae Barron, the corner. I mean, obviously top on the big board here, but outside of Travarius Ward, I think they could use a little more depth at corner, and I like Barron's game. I know there was some stuff about Will Johnson and his health at the combine. So when it comes from a pure corner perspective, I think Jahdae Barron is probably the safest corner pick at this spot. And that seems like a spot in their defense they could use some depth, because they had a lithiad of injuries there last year, and I think it hurt them a lot, especially in that middle part of the season. So it'll be Jahdae Barron here for me for the 49ers. You guys have any qualms with that pick? That one seemed pretty easy.
He tested out well. He ran a 4.39, I believe.
Another example of a guy making himself some money at the combine.
Yeah, I mean, short arms. The one thing that he came out of the combine, the one negative thing was he had short arms. But I think he's a great football player, and at the very least, you can find a role for him. If it's not at the split corner position, he can definitely play in the nickel. Hufanga is a free agent. Ward is a free agent, so definitely makes sense. Definitely fills a need. He can play all over the defensive backfield, so it makes total sense to me.
I think Saleh will find a place for him. I mean, if it's outside or inside, they start him out inside, move him outside eventually, kind of like what the Chiefs did with McDuffie. I don't know. It just feels like a kind of a layup when it comes to a position of need, and then you've got the player there. I did think about Will Johnson though, but just the health stuff.
That was my only thing. That was my only question for you, is how you felt about Will. But I guess.
I mean, again, the health stuff could clear up by the time the draft's here, and maybe the 49ers are comfortable with how they feel about his health.
Yeah.
I just don't know. I'm operating on, I don't know how healthy he is, to be honest. And if the status quo right now is that he's not healthy, then I think you go with Barron. But if stuff clears up by the time the draft's here, I wouldn't be shocked if that picks Will Johnson as well. But for right now, I'm slotting in Barron there. And I think the big thing is Saleh being back there. And Jahdae Barron's a very instinctive football player. I think Saleh will get the most out of him.
I mean, slot, you play him in the slot, run support, blitzing, and then obviously one-on-one coverage. I mean, I don't think – I mean, if you're getting them at 11 and you're the 49ers, you're addressing a major need and a new defensive coordinator like Saleh, I think he's a perfect fit.
Now, at 12, Mike, you're picking at 12 at Dallas here. What are you?
I am picking at 12. And, obviously all the talk has really been Ashton Jeanty going here. But I mean, if you're what you need at this point, if Jeanty's off the board and you're operating with what the board is, You need a playmaker and you need a difference maker. And you also need somebody who's going to line up next to CeeDee Lamb and complement him. And that's why I think here Cowboys are going to go Ted McMillan from Arizona.
He already got picked.
He got picked.
I'm sorry. Ted McMillan, the backup to him, Luther Burden. Over the past few seasons, I mean, explosive playmaker. I mean, and that's just about it. Like, I mean, you're talking 50 explosive plays in the last year. 15 plus yards. Guy can catch the ball when they're contested targets. You put all the money into Dak Prescott. He's your guy. I think there's other holes that they definitely need to plug along that offense. I mean, that's not the question here. We're just talking one draft pick. But I think it's at this point, I mean, it's a coin flip. If you're not going to get Ted McMillan, go get a big play guy like Luther Burden. Give yourself somebody who's going to line up as a number 2 next to CeeDee Lamb. I think that's the smartest play for them. There's a lot of holes, obviously, that they need to address. I think can be addressed in later rounds or in free agency. But I mean, if you're bringing in Brian Schottenheimer and you're going to want to be slinging the ball around, he's going to want to make a statement. And I think Luther Burden, if he's there, will be a major factor in that offense that first year.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw it, but I don't know who put the quote out there, but there was a rumor going around the Cowboys are not interested in re-signing any of the guys that are hitting free agency right now that they had in their team previously. They're looking to do a lot of overhaul. So that means, Brandon Cooks won't be back. And I'm with you, Mike. I don't think you could walk into next season with CeeDee Lamb and then your next best receiver being, Jalen Tolbert or somebody else. So
Sure.
I like the Luther Burden pick here. He's a great yak guy, another explosive weapon. It's kind of a nice consolation, I guess, compared to having Genty there. But I like the pick.
And I had the 3. I had Burden, McMillan, Ash, and Genty, because you need somebody explosive that you got to be able to give the ball to next year if you're the Cowboys. And that, I mean, you got to throw a dart at one of the 3.
Yeah, and you can't just exclusively rely on CeeDee Lamb because he's expressed some discontent with being the guy who is the only guy carrying a struggling offense, especially when Dak Prescott might go down. So you need to give your quarterback, whoever it may be, as many options as possible. And I think just a last point that Luther Burden could play in the slot or he could play as a Z receiver. He's not he obviously can't play the split out, but he's 100% a versatile wide receiver, and he's a guy who just catches the ball and makes plays and has been recognized as one of the most talented players in his age group since high school. So it's been something that you've seen from Luther Burden consistently. So especially the go into Missouri and wanting to turn around that program, I like the attitude on the man.
Yeah, and a great combine to top it all off for him.
Yeah, and 2 things. That was what I was going to say. He came in to the combine 6 feet. He measured out 6 feet 206. So he's a lot bigger than you realize. So I agree with your point, Mike. Turtle, I apologize. The reason I kind of jumped off of San Francisco so quickly was because I thought he was going to take Will Johnson there. So a little shocking. But to me, Mike, it makes the most sense. Honestly, they need more skill help. So I agree with that pick, honestly, where he's at. Makes it a little bit tougher for me with Miami because Will's available. I didn't know if he would be. But with that being said, I think it's pretty obvious you're losing Teron Armstead this year. You got to find his replacement. And I think you got to stay focused on the real mission here in Miami, and that's keeping Tua healthy and upright. I think the obvious pick is Kelvin Banks. And, honestly, kind of overshadowed by Will Campbell's great combine. But, I mean, Kelvin Banks checked all the boxes as well. He could be another 10-year type tackle as well. he could be the next Teron Armstead, which is crazy to say, as good as he is. But I think they need to fill that void. Expect Patrick Paul probably to move to right tackle, maybe protect Tua's blind side on the right side of the offensive line, and put Kelvin on the left side and go from there. But yeah, they can go a lot of different ways, but that was my thinking. So yeah.
You got him at tackle. He's not a guard, right?
He is a tackle. Yeah.
Yeah, I still like the pick. I think that makes a ton of sense. No qualms from me.
And especially with, just how Mike McDaniel's offense is kind of built. I mean, it's just you build from the inside out, and then you go from there. And I think that's something that shores up a position that was a major issue for them down the stretch last year, as we saw.
Well, and it's how Tua's built as well.
Yeah,
he's small. He's brittle. You got to keep him upright. He can deliver the ball and do what you need to do, but you need an offensive line to allow him to do that. He's not going to be a guy who's able to create for himself and evade tacklers in the backfield. So the offensive line, they've got the skill position figured out, right? If you're keeping Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, you need to address that O-line to make sure that the offense runs smoothly with Tua Tagovailoa back there. Big Roll Tide as well.
Yeah, I was hoping with your pick, Christian, you're going to do what I did last draft and pick Tyler Warren and just absolutely cuck the Colts, but you didn't. So now I will unfortunately pick Tyler Warren here for the Colts. This seems like such a square pick, but it just makes a ton of sense for them. I mean, they don't have a glimmer of hope at the tight end position. I mean, they had kind of a split out smaller guy in Will Mallory. They had Ryan Granson. I mean, they got Mo Alley Cox. I mean, I don't even know who the hell is still signed at that position for the Colts.
Yeah,
and this just makes a ton of sense. Do you pick you get the best tight end in the draft at 14, and we're probably whenever they do the the inside the GM or war room or whatever, like last year when Chris Ballard sat there smirking, we got the best pass rusher in the draft at 15. He's going to do the same exact thing here at 14. We got the best tight end in the draft at 14, doing his little chuckle, and they'll probably be picking 16 next year. But in any case, Tyler Warren's the pick here.
Yeah, it's a Colts fan dream right there. I think every Colts fan you talk to has been clamoring for Tyler Warren. There's a chance they might have to trade up for him in case the Bears maybe get antsy and the board falls that way for them as well. I could see the Bears maybe making that move. So I don't know if the Colts are going to be able to stick and pick and get Tyler Warren, but if they do in this scenario, I think this is another case to just run up to the podium and ask questions later.
And also don't be surprised if they're the pick behind Miami and they panic, trade up a pick, take Warren there, because it's not inconceivable that he's on the big board for Gesicki's gone. Jonnu Smith is not going to be your tight end number one. I don't think if you're comfortable going into next year, there's a very good possibility they trade up a pick to go take him.
Yeah, and I mean Miami could totally bait them. I mean, we talked about that in our last mock about. I think Jonnu Smith's in the last year of his deal, and he's 31. I mean, he had a good season last year, but certainly not the long-term answer there. I could easily see Miami baiting Chris Ballard into giving up an extra, day 3 pick or something, or a couple extra day 3 picks to move up a spot. Totally not out of the realms of possibility. A lot of teams getting lucky though here at the way the board's shaking out, and you have to wonder. I mean, if we were doing trades, I think there would be a lot of teams calling up to teams like the Bears and the Dolphins or maybe the 49ers. I mean, they're said to go get a guy like if Mason Graham was there at 10, I mean, there could be a lot of movement. I think there's gonna be a lot of movement in general, but with certain guys falling like they are right now, there's a lot of teams getting lucky, and there will be a lot of teams antsy that are picking in the back half of the teens that might try to trade up into the 11, 12 range and get a guy that falls. So.
Absolutely. And 1 sec. Do you guys start? Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so we can jump right into the Falcons, and Turtle, you mentioned it. Everyone's kind of lucking out here. There's a couple of different options we can go with Atlanta. I think obviously they want to find a replacement for Matt Judon. But here, I think we take the best defensive player on the board right now. And that, to me,
Whoa. Hold on.
this guy.
We pause.
So I'm sorry about that. So, yes, I think this is you're going to take the best defensive player on the board here if you're Atlanta.
Christian, you're paused.
Yeah.
You got to record.
We're recording.
We're good.
Oh, it shows paused on my end. Never mind then. Forgive me. My bad.
No, it says it's recording.
All right. We're good.
Wait. Yeah. Let's just say, okay, well.
All right, I'm going to start, at pick 15.
Yeah, start here.
So, at pick 15, as Turtle mentioned, we're kind of lucking out here. To me, you take the best defensive player on the board here. And with Atlanta, I know they want to replace Matt Judon, obviously. But to me, the guy is Nick Emenwari for sure. To me, he's the best safety in this class. He made his way in the combine. I think he definitely dominated the combine.
Doesn't he have an RAS score of 10? Or it's something ridiculous. He's measured as like the most freakish athlete in combine history.
Yeah, it's crazy. So either way, you're going to find a position for him. He could play probably in the box as a linebacker if you need him to, depending on what you do with Justin Simmons, who's a free agent, and Richie Grant, who's also a free agent. And ultimately, I think he's Cam Chancellor to me. That's the floor for me, Cam Chancellor.
That's what I was going to say. The floor for him is Cam Chancellor?
Yeah, and I think the ceiling is, I said it before, we kind of got some pushback on it, but I think it's Brian Dawkins.
Wow. A floor of Cam Chancellor. That's a player, right?
I hope he falls to the Texans, to be quite honest. There's probably no shot at this point, but if he's there at 25, I would love it. But in any case, I love his game. I think he's a total freak of nature. You were on him early, Christian, and as I've come around to the table here, I completely agree with you. I think he's going to be a stud.
Yeah,
best defensive player left over Will Johnson and some other, I think, pretty good players out here. I like the bold statement, and I could easily see it.
And you're talking about like what was the major weakness in the Falcons' defense. I mean, they were able to get pressure on quarterbacks. They were just getting absolutely torched in the secondary. So I think that's a very good pick.
No argument here on that.
Well, very good. Do we move on to the Arizona Cardinals here?
Yep, that's you.
All right, that is me. This is such an interesting one. Like there's a lot of different ways I want to go with this pick. Part of me really wants to take an offensive lineman, but the only good guy I really see left is Josh Simmons. And I know he's been mocked to the Cardinals a ton. But I'm going to do kind of the same thing I did with the 49ers here. And I think I'm going to go with Will Johnson. And the reasoning being is the same thing with the 49ers is I don't think that they have a ton of depth at corner. They've got Sean Murphy-Bunting there. But I don't think they have a true lockdown stud corner. And yeah, there's some health risk with Will Johnson, but you were just talking about the best defensive player probably available left. From a talent perspective, especially from in the back end part of the defense, Will Johnson is the guy. You're talking about a top 10 talent that you're getting at 16. So kind of a BPA pick here, but I think it makes sense for Arizona.
And I'm on the clock.
Lucky, right? The team gets lucky with the way the board falls, is what I was saying.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Being able to have a guy like Will Johnson fall, he was almost a sure thing top pick just a few weeks ago, and now falls all the way to 16. Just shows that these teams can get.
And I'm on the clock here at 17 with the Bengals. Pack, you scroll up a bit. I just wanted to see after my technical difficulties kind of where the cards landed. See what I'm working with. Okay, perfect. Right here, I think you gotta go Jahdae Barron if you're the Cincinnati Bengals.
He's gone.
He's already gone. So then
Yeah.
you would have gone him. Then I think the next up is Walter Nolan. I think that is someone you kind of prioritize. You're coming off. I mean, Trey Hendrickson just had 17 and a half sacks last year. Guess how many sacks the Bengals had all year? 18 and a half. That is word enough to why I think, you have to beef up your pass rushing, especially, you're in a division where you're going to be playing Lamar Jackson twice a year. I mean, you need people that are going to be able to get after the quarterback. I think that's the best available for them at this point. I think the latter will come true with, he had a career high 6.5 sacks. I don't think that's momentum after going to Texas A&M that is gonna or going to Mississippi that is gonna fall flat at all. And I think it's a good pick for them in their position. Yeah. I mean, defensive line is a major need that they have going in.
Absolutely.
To this, and this is already saying that they've already franchise tagged T. Higgins. So why you shored up a wide receiver too for yourself. I think there's something you can address in free agency with what I think is their second biggest need after defensive line, which would be offensive line. So I think Walter Nolan makes sense for him right here.
Yeah, Mike, I really love this pick.
Yeah. I was going to say Sam Hubbard retired today, too. Their other defensive end.
So, he retired? Okay.
So go ahead, Christian. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I agree. I completely love this pick. I think the biggest flop for the Bengals this year was the fact that they didn't re-sign DJ Reader and they signed Sheldon Rankins. They let him walk already. So they clearly need help on the interior defensive line. I think Walter Nolan is probably the second best interior defensive lineman in this draft class. So, I've seen him mocked. Like I had him a couple weeks ago mocked as high as 9. So I think this would be a great pick for Cincinnati. I think he's probably the best athlete at this position available. When he fills out, I think he's going to be a real problem.
Yeah, you mentioned it, Christian, that the lack of DJ Reader this year on the interior. DJ Reader was a great run defender, and Sheldon Rankins just wasn't the same type of run defender that DJ Reader was. Walter Nolan is an elite run defender, and he's kind of added to his pass rushing a little bit from the interior. But one thing he does really well that I think will easily translate to the NFL, even if he doesn't get to be like an elite pass rusher in the NFL, is he's going to be a good run defender. He was really good in college at that aspect of the game. So I like the pick a lot here with Walter Nolan.
And just to give him his flowers, 12 tackles for loss. It was second in the FBS. Like the guy can get after whoever's holding on to the football and able to get through and get pressure, be it running back or quarterback. And I think it's going to be. It's almost a match made in heaven if you're the Bengals at this point.
Yeah, let's see if we can get Pat on the mic real quick. 1 second.
Yeah, I think one concern that we've been kind of tiptoeing around with Walter Nolan is that the talent has always been there. The production has been there. This is a guy who everyone around him has known that he's eventually going to be a player in the NFL, if not a star. But the concern is that he's bounced around multiple times, multiple high school programs, now multiple college programs. I know it's the age of NIL and transferring, but I think there's something there when it comes to a guy who hasn't played on a singular football team for an extended amount of time and that going back to high school, character concerns and evaluations in the NFL draft can get weird, and teams can get finicky about these certain players that they're investing so much into. And Walter Nolan, as we've said, this could be a dream for the Bengals to have him fall to them, but it could also be a nightmare if it all goes wrong and the character concerns come to light and he's not a coachable player. I don't know that I haven't heard that, and I haven't obviously read that he's directly not coachable, but there has to be something involved with bouncing around that much while being that talented of a player, where Walter Nolan has never not been the best player on his football team. So it leads you to question why move around so much? Why weren't you sticking with the team that you were originally with? And maybe that could scare some NFL teams off. I don't know.
It all goes back to what Sean Payton told Russell Wilson. You're not running for public office. You're here to play football.
Yeah. No, Walter Nolan would.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I mean, he'd be a great player on a cheap contract that the Bengals wouldn't have to pay.
And they didn't stop him from drafting Jermaine Burton last year.
That's true. That's a good point. Shameful roll tide.
Bringing in guys like Adam Pac-Man Jones and T.O. when they're probably like public enemy number one in the league. Perfect. So yeah, I think it's a perfect fit now that you mention it, Pat. Perfect fit.
I like the All right.
Yeah, we got the Seahawks now.
Yeah, this one I'm struggling here at the Seahawks. I think this is where something crazy. I think they're going to go edge, and I'm kind of bouncing around between a couple guys, but with I'm going to go with Shamar Stewart here, and I know people are going to fall in love with the combine that he had. We see there's always a type of guy like that sort of shoots up draft boards, and I'm looking at his counterparts here. Mike Green didn't do anything besides bench press at the combine. I thought about Michael Williams, thought about Donovan I don't even know how to pronounce his last name, but he had a good combine too, elite shuttle time. But you're talking from a pure pass rushing perspective, with all the traits you can think of. I think this is where the Seahawks go with Shamar Stewart. And a defensive head coach, Mike McDonald, try to get the most out of his talent. So I've got Shamar Stewart there. Always seems to be one guy like that rises a ton, and I think that's where the shoe kind of fits here for Shamar Stewart.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick. And Shamar's he's not really scheme specific. So I think that helps him a lot as well. And man, if he ends up hitting as a prospect and you get him with Byron Murphy and the rest of those boys, I think that's a really good start up front with Leo Williams as well.
I think their defense needed some more. They needed some more pop. You know what I mean? Like they kind of started out the year hot against some lackluster offenses, but when they played good offenses, they just didn't seem to have the talent part down, and there was still some adjusting there to the McDonald scheme. But I think Shamar Stewart gives you a ton of upside and pop just from an athleticism standpoint. I think that defense sorely needs something like that.
And Turtle, I think upside and pop. I mean, if there were more numbers, and if it was a different Texas A&M team, this past year, we could definitely. I mean, it's not inconceivable that we could have been talking about Shamar Stewart going in the top 10 in this draft. Had the season played out, just based off straight talent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you can say he's fallen through the cracks a little bit. I think he's risen up. He's earned himself a hefty check from where he was before. And there always seems to be a guy like that in the draft. And then there's a guy like James Pierce, who was supposed to be a top 10 pick the whole time and falls down. I just think Shamar Stewart, just from like I said, like an athletic and pop standpoint, I think he's got some work to do technique wise, but I just think
there's
a player
there's enough depth there in Seattle, I think, for him to figure it out. I think it's a great environment for him to fall into.
Agreed there.
Compared himself to Julius Peppers in terms of
wouldn't that be one hell of a come up if he ends
you
up
gotta like the confidence for sure.
If he ends up being 3/4 of Jabril Peppers, it's a great pick at 18.
Yeah, Julius.
3/4 of Jabril.
Oh yeah, did I say Jaleel Peppers? I don't know what the hell I was thinking of.
Well,
Julius Peppers. I swear that's what I meant to say.
Yeah, right. I agree.
He goes right.
Yeah,
All right, let's move on. I'm not picking for a while, right? After that shenanigans, I might just be quiet for a couple picks.
You had that great AFC South division, the NFC West. Both teams went so deep into the playoffs. Both divisions.
Yeah, we're looking great.
But I'm picking here at 19, and honestly, a lot of edges on the board. That's a position of need for Tampa Bay. Pierce, Ezeraku, Michael Williams, all entertaining to me. I just think under this situation, under this circumstance, I think Jacksonville has a real opportunity to add Chris Godwin right now. So I'm going to assume that they're seriously concerned about Chris Godwin leaving still. And I had Tampa Bay in last mock as well, and I had them taking Egbuka. I'm going to stick with Egbuka here, despite the combine Matthew Golden put up. I love Matthew Golden. He had a great combine, made a lot of money, but I think Egbuka is still the pick. I think when you talk about what they're going to need going forward, I think they're still going to need that receiver that can do everything. That's a technician to at least replace some of what Chris Godwin was for that team. So I think that's more important. I'm valuing offense more than defense here. That
was going to be my question. I mean, I think there's also concerns about who they're going to lose on the defensive side of the ball, like potentially Lavonte David. I mean, we got to see where the chips fall, but assuming just plug in the Chris Godwin, plug in the Chris Godwin replacement over someone like that.
Yeah, I think I'm just going off of, as you mentioned, like I value, to me, the offensive weapons here for Tampa Bay more than the edge. I think they have a real franchise altering edge rusher as is in Yaya Diaby. I think Vita Vea is great. I think they invested a pretty hefty amount of capital into Kalijah Kancey. They're still going to need to find an edge rusher this offseason. I think with it being one of the deepest aspects of this draft class, I think they can actually hold off for one if they really feel like they need one. Because I'm sure there's going to be a couple of guys that fall. And to me, Egbuka might be the most pro-ready prospect in this class. Just all around, in terms of involving himself in the blocking game. I know that's going to be extremely important for a Tampa Bay offense. So, yeah, and I think they'll be able to find an edge rusher or an off-ball linebacker later on in the draft if they want to.
That's an interesting pick there because honestly, I thought Egbuka could have gone in either of these from the Bucs to the Steelers. I thought he could have gone either of those three picks.
Sure.
So that's interesting.
Even Denver, yeah.
I mean, I was going to say
three picks: Denver, LA, or any of those teams.
I
thought you were going to go with. I thought you were going to go with Ezeraku.
I was thinking about it. Yeah. Jahad Campbell or Ezeraku, I think they're the big names here. Michael Williams is still available. I think a lot of teams value him as like the second best edge in this class, arguably. So yeah, I mean, it'd be a ballsy.
I like your reasoning. I really like your reasoning on Egbuka though. There.
Yeah, And it's an interesting way for the board to shake out, right? At this point, for a team like the Broncos, because you have multiple needs. You've got really you just need a playmaker on the offensive side of the ball that's not named Courtland Sutton, and we know what Sean Payton has done historically when it comes to getting creative, moving guys around in the offense, finding ways to use tight ends, right? And tight end was one of the main positions of need, something that a spot where the Broncos would have liked to have gotten a lot more production than they did this last season. And so I think that Sean Payton identifies a guy that he really likes and a guy that he could find a way to use in his offense in a variety of ways, line up as a tight end, as a wide receiver, maybe as a running back. Could we see a Taysom Hill renaissance? Sean Payton gets crafty with the way he uses tight ends, and that's going to be Colston Loveland.
Good pick.
Big guy, crisp route runner for his size, for sure. A lot of things you could do with him on the offense. And the main thing that he would be able to do is just make Bo Nix's job a whole lot easier and not have to force the ball to Courtland Sutton. And I just think that Sean Payton could get very creative with that pick. And it takes him from the Chargers, who I imagine would be looking, and the division rival would be salivating over the chance to get a Michigan man and Colston Loveland a little later on in the draft.
And Pat, I also like it based off just a run blocking perspective, because I think we actually may see this may be the year where Javonte Williams gets more and more phased out, and I think it could be a big year for guys like Audric Estime, and especially in the run blocking, run blocking, play calling, and everything. I mean, he's a good addition, and he's a playmaker on top of it all.
Yeah, good pick. No debate.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was It's interesting at the combine. I thought Tyler Warren all year was just so much bigger than a lot of different guys. But Tyler Warren came in 6'5.5", 256. Colston Loveland came in 6'5" and 3/4, 248. So it's a lot closer than I anticipated. Loveland's taller. He might have the bigger arm length. He might be the faster tight end. He might still be, I know early on in the year he was tight end 1 for a lot of people. He still might end up being tight end 1 of this draft. So, yeah, I don't see a problem with taking him that high and taking him from your divisional rival. I like the pick.
Yeah. Maybe you just feel like Tyler Warren plays bigger. You know what I mean?
Right.
We just see him Moss guys all the time. And, yeah, I mean, maybe Loveland has that in his bag. He really just didn't have a chance to show it with how bad the quarterback play was this year.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Sean Payton would get out of him. So we move back to GM Mike.
We move back to GM Mike. Picking for right here, I'd trade the pick if I were the Steelers. Get like 3/4 for it, and then see what you can do with it. No, I think right now, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers and you look at the board and you see if Colston Loveland's going to go to Denver right there, and Emeka Egbuka goes to Tampa Bay, I think you are licking your chops for Matthew Golden out of Texas to give someone to be a number 2 next to George Pickens. I mean, you talk about taking advantage of the playing time that you had on a championship caliber college football team. I mean, he had 987 yards. He was able to. He's a guy that I think is going to fit in perfectly because of how they utilize their receivers, where George Pickens is the deep guy. Who's underneath? Gunnar Olszewski? No. I mean, you're going to need a number 2 to complement him, especially if you're going to be rolling the bones with Russ coming up next year. I mean, he ran a 4.29. He shows he has downfield ability, but it also exploits, I think, what is a weakness in their offense, which is, okay, if we're not throwing the ball deep and we're not running it for 2 yards in a cloud of dust, who else are we going to throw it to? And I think he allows a lot more flexibility in, you're going to have another year of Russ. And I think he adds ability at all three levels of the receiving game and the consistency if they can get it from the quarterback of a sure pass catcher that, is not George Pickens, who, I mean, we've seen him go off with the blink of an eye. I mean, I think it's a solid pick for him, and I think they need an offensive weapon badly.
Yeah, I've been a big Matthew Golden guy for a while now, and I agree with everything you said there. You're talking about all three levels he can definitely produce. He's a little bit on the smaller side. I don't want to make the direct comparison to Xavier Worthy because I think he's a little bit bigger and more of a complete receiver than Xavier Worthy was. But I love how Matthew Golden attacks the football. We saw a ton in the college ball playoffs, him making big catch after big catch.
Right.
I mean, he's not a body catcher. He is a hands catcher, and he is a very crisp route runner. He can attack, like you said, Mike, all three levels. It seems like a no-brainer for Pittsburgh. I think he compliments George Pickens well because, like you said, George Pickens can crash out every once in a while, and he is a guy who, he'll have like 150 yards receiving on 8 catches and then have 1 catch for 3 yards. I feel like Matthew Golden, he can really fill in the gaps there as like a guy who can get you 4 or 5 catches a game and be impactful on a week in, week out basis. Much needed consistency there, I think. And then you could just, you don't have to worry about playing Calvin Austin anywhere else besides putting Calvin Austin in the slot where he belongs. So I really think it helps you fill out the receiver room.
And I think, you also think back to, getting rid of Deontay Johnson. I mean, it almost fits in like, it's perfect. He's got the intangibles for them, and you have the young age for them to be able to build off.
That kind of feels like a good player comp for
not just
Matthew
Deontay.
Golden.
Yeah, I would include all of those 2010s Steelers guys like Mike Wallace. Like you can go back to Mike Wallace, similar style.
Yeah.
The quarterback is going to be the question, but I mean you can't doubt the guy's skill set.
Yeah. So we can go into my next 3 picks. We got 3 in a row here as the temporary GM of the AFC West and NFC North, respectively. And if the board shakes out like this for the Los Angeles Chargers, I think you look at what Jim Harbaugh has been known to do. He likes his guys. He probably would have liked to have Colston Loveland here, but he can get a nice consolation prize as it stands with Kenneth Grant as in the defensive interior, being able to make that selection. I know it's not as sexy of a pick because we made it in our last mock draft too. We pushed Mike to make this move, but I think it still just makes a lot of sense in terms of how Jim Harbaugh wants to build this team, wants to build this defensive front. A guy that he recruited, a guy that he'll be able to coach in the NFL, already knows will be bought into his style, his way of playing. And I think with regards to Harbaugh, that matters most, more than almost any other coach, is that he needs guys that are going to be fully bought into his system. Kenneth Grant is that through and through. This is a guy who can rush the passer, who can stop the run. Maybe was a little bit overshadowed playing next to Mason Graham with all that draft hype that he's gotten. But if he were playing standalone on a defensive line, you would know that he is a top-tier player and that he's not just benefiting from playing next to Mason Graham. So you'll see he will get taken probably somewhere in the first round, and if he falls to the Chargers, I think they'll pounce on him.
Now, Pat, did you have any you got to think of the Chargers through the Harbaugh lens, and I saw it 2 ways. You're either going to beef up on the defensive side of the ball, or who I thought here. Did you have any thoughts about going running back and maybe a guy like a Marion?
Yeah. No, I definitely thought of it. I thought of it for sure. I also thought of how deep this class is overall at running back, and this is obviously going to be an issue of just availability and supply and demand, but everyone keeps talking about how deep of a draft this is when it comes to defensive linemen and pass rushers, but there's probably going to be a decent run on them, whether it's at the back end of the first round or the top of the second round.
Yeah.
where I don't anticipate. I could see 2 running backs going high, but I don't necessarily know that I would see a run on running backs to where a team like the Chargers, if they were counting on getting someone on the defensive interior, that they would be able to just say, we'll take him in the next round, or we'll wait till the next round to get him.
Yeah.
I feel like defensive interior had to put a premium on that, especially a first-round talent. And so I think they go Kenneth Grant, and they don't overthink it. There are a lot of great running backs in this draft. It feels like every running back is going to be one of the fastest rookies we've ever seen. Historic running back class for sure. So I think they bet on the depth on that side of the ball, and then trust their scouting on the defensive side and take the premium position at a position of need from a guy that Harbaugh's already coached and by all indications likes a lot.
Hang on, Mike. Hang on.
Well, I
don't mean. Hang on. No. Oh well, that's what I'm about to do, Mike. I don't want to. I was gonna say I'm gonna nuke Pat's breakdown here because while we've been on the pod, like I want to say maybe like 30, 40 minutes ago, Joey Bosa was released by the Chargers, and I just saw this as well. I don't know if that changes your pick at all. I mean, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's still Kenneth Grant, but Joey Bosa has been released.
I would probably stick with Kenneth Grant.
Yeah.
Just with the options on the board, but that certainly makes them
go ahead. And if we're being honest here, Khalil Mack is still in play. I've been a big fan for a long time of the backup there. His name is, let me check real quick, Mr. It's like Tuli Tuipulotu. I've been a huge fan of him.
Oh yeah, he was a good player last year.
Yeah, so I think that's not as big of an issue as we make it out to be. I know this podcast is not huge fans of James Pierce, but he is probably a first round pick just out of respect to him. I mean, he had a great combine, but I still agree. Like I was gonna say before you mentioned the Bosa news, I can see Kenneth Grant go as high as 15 to Atlanta. So it'd be a very high value pick to me if he fell to 22. I have no issue with it at all, Pat.
Very much. I think it's a great pick, Pat.
Thank you. That's very validating. I hope you also think that this next pick is great too, because it feels just like a Packer pick, right? I mean, are they going to go with a top end wide receiver in the first round, or are they going to go defense and embolden what they've got going on that side and just make what this just feels like such a Packer pick to me? Siobhan Revell Jr., big, long, lean corner prospect. You know, a guy who just has the measurables that you are looking for in Jeff Hafley's defense and what Brian Gutekunst has historically valued. Feels like they're going to go defense. They need to replace Jair Alexander, who I think has it been confirmed that he's getting released or that he was released at this point?
Not yet, but it looks that way.
I mean, he hasn't been available these past couple of seasons, so they're going to need to double down on the corner, especially when you've got just a division that with some elite wide receivers across the board. You can't. And passing attacks, they're going to have to keep up by continuing to double down on this secondary. And I think the Packers make the pick based off the measurables and the tape that they like to see from a guy like Siobhan Revell.
Yeah, I talked about Revell in the last mock. I think I had him to the Commanders at what was it, 26 or 27 or whatever that was. Yeah, 28. Would not be entirely shocked if he got picked here at 23. I mean, he's a baller in my opinion. Again, a little slim, but again, from a film perspective, speed perspective, he checks a lot of the boxes.
And just talking team needs. I mean, especially, I think it's a big hole that they fell.
Yeah, and I mean that the next team has to address a team need. We know that for sure after watching their playoff exit against the Rams in the first round and the way that Sam Darnold, who very well may be the Vikings quarterback next year, the way that he was just totally thrown off his game by an elite pass rush, particularly the pass rush up the middle. And so you got to address that. That's a glaring need that they very well could address in free agency, but until they do that, you can't have the offensive line look like it did in that playoff game going forward if you want to compete, especially with Sam Darnold at quarterback. So this might be a shocker, but I'm going to have the Vikings. People could think it's a reach, but give me the top center in the draft. Give me arguably one of the better interior O-linemen. Give me Gray Zabel here at 24.
Sorry, they have him listed as a tackle still.
He's still listed as a tackle, but he's going to play on the interior.
He's a center. He's going to be a center.
He's going to be a center. But I think they can also play him at guard as well. I mean, I think that he's not going to be completely tied down to having to be a center. He's can play across the line, and they just flat out need to get better. A lot of people could look for Tyler Booker at this pick, and I would give him a big Roll Tide for it. But when you talk about athleticism, size, just the ability to run block, hold up in the passing game.
36-inch vertical.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, he's an athletic freak, the exact type of guy that you would want in Kevin O'Connell's offense, being able to get to the second level, block on the interior, and hold up against some of these defensive linemen in the NFC North and across the NFC. I mean, these defensive lines are blowing up between Los Angeles, Philadelphia. The defensive line investment is where it's at right now. Across the NFL, and along with that, you're going to have some offensive line investment. So, and the Vikings are going to be one of those teams. They need to do it on the interior. They've already got two great tackles in Darisaw and Brian O'Neill. So I don't anticipate they're going to make any changes there. Where it needs to happen is up the middle in the interior, and I think Gray Zabel is the most clear answer for them right now. A lot of people think it's maybe a reach, but offensive linemen are going to be on a premium in this draft. Just given how great the defensive line class is and, how few and far between great offensive linemen are. So you got to take the swing when you get the chance.
And especially also, Pat, the fact that you may be defending what will be a quote-unquote rookie quarterback and what could be, J.J. McCarthy going out there. I mean, you want this guy to stay out. I think I think it's a great pick.
Just scrolling through for everybody in case you need to see some names.
Wow. So after I make my pick, Christian has to remind everybody of the board because of how off the map I was. And now Christian just went green.
Sorry. Back up. All right, Turtle. Here's the big pick, man.
Yeah. Wow.
Casario.
Well, it's just this board is just nuts, and I did not expect some of these guys to be here. I mean, this is really tough because I'm sitting here thinking that I would have to choose between one of the Josh Simmons, Tyler Booker, Josh Connerly, and shore up offensive line and just be done with it. But with some of these there was news that came out about, Danielle Hunter wants an extension from the Texans. He's got 1 year left on his deal, and there's some very intriguing edge rushers here. And then also I think back to Jimmy Ward doing classic Jimmy Ward stuff and not being available for 90% of the season. I'm over-exaggerating there. And, you're having to play Eric Murray at strong safety, and here's Malachi Starks sitting here. I think if Malachi Starks makes it to this pick, the Texans are picking Malachi Starks, and they're not going offensive line. I don't see how Malachi Starks makes it this far, but it would be a very Nick Caserio pick if Malachi Starks made it 25 and he picked Malachi Starks. So give me Malachi Starks at 25. Look, it makes a ton of sense for the Texans to pick a safety, especially the caliber of Malachi Starks. As I mentioned, Jimmy Ward can't really be relied upon to play a full season at this point. You're kind of running with Eric Murray and Kalen Bullock at your deep safeties towards the end of last year, and that was not a recipe for success. Jalen Petrie is coming off of a torn labrum. and he's more of a nickel kind of star player anyways. This would solve a ton of depth problems I think the Texans faced last year at the back end of the year, and you've got your two safeties for the next 3 to 4 years easily with Malachi Starks and Kalen Bullock. We'll see what happens with Jalen Petrie in a couple years, but you talk about a back end of the defense. Good Lord, Derek Stingley, Kamari Laster, Jalen Petrie, Kalen Bullock, and Malachi Starks. I mean, that is you're set on the back end for the next couple of years. Combine that with the pass rush. The Texans defense would be absolutely elite. I was intrigued by some of these edge guys still sitting here just because of the Danielle Hunter news. I think Danielle Hunter gets done and extended, but I mean that would also be intriguing just from a developmental perspective. Would not put that past Nick Caserio either. But the fact that Malachi Starks is still sitting there is absolutely insane to me. Address offensive line later. There'll be some guys there. You can address maybe a backup running back or receiver later in the draft. You can go free agency in those routes as well, but you're not going to get a safety the caliber of Malachi Starks very often at pick 25. I think I had him mocked to – was it the Saints at 9 in our first mock?
Yeah,
again, maybe it's just because safety's not a premium position, but the Texans really struggled in that aspect towards the end of last year. And you just can't trust Jimmy Ward to be out there for if you're including playoffs and you want to make a deep playoff run, 18, 19 games. So, Malachi Starks, that's a run the ticket up there type pick, I think, and you think about all the other stuff later. Any qualms there?
No.
Honestly,
he's been the top safety before the combine. He was a top safety projected in the draft. So if he was able to fall that far in the draft to the Texans, I think you just got to go ahead and jump on it.
Yeah, I would be ecstatic about the back end of that defense with the type of talent that they would have. I mean, that's straight up Lock City. That's no fly zone if you've got all those guys back there. And D'Amico's going to have a field day scheming those guys up. So,
and honestly, considering where their second round pick is, I believe it's at 50.
I was at 54, but I could be wrong there.
57.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of great tackles on the board, still a lot of great guards on the board here. So
yeah, well, we'll get there. I mean, we've still got that round. I mean, we'll have to fire cruise to that round, but all right. Well, let's get on with it then. Let me pick for the Rams here.
Double dip.
Oh boy, yeah, double dipping. Yeah, God, there's just there's just so much talent still here left on the board, but I think I'm gonna go with here. Oh, this guy's a great scheme fit for this offense. Josh Connerly Jr., tackle. I don't know exactly what the Rams tackle situation is. I know they just traded Jonah Jackson. He's an interior line guy, but
they just extended Alaric Jackson to play left tackle. So he's the left tackle. They got
Noteboom still. Yeah, Avila's a good guard. He's a good guard. He'll slot in there.
I think Noteboom might be a free agent. Bo Limmer's the rookie center. And then Havenstein's coming back at right tackle.
Yeah, but Havenstein, I
older.
Yeah,
guy.
old, and there's an upgrade that could be had there. Yeah, give me Josh Connerly. I love Josh Connerly's game from a scheme fit for McVay. He's an athletic tackle. I think he's very good at the point of attack. Look, I very much thought about one of these edges here. This was a hard pick for me with the Rams, just because it's hard for me to sit here and pick for need for them over some of the talent that's still out there. But I think there's a good chance that they pick Josh Connerly at 26, irrespective of how the board plays out, and I think he'll be there. And he's a great scheme fit. Yeah. Josh Simmons, I'm not overly hyped about his medicals, so I just think Josh Connerly is a better fit for the Rams there. And he could be a starter on day one, or he could be – look, there's no qualms in picking a swing tackle for, like, their first year. I think you always need 3 tackles in an NFL team. because you really don't know what's going to happen with injuries or aside. And I like Connerly a lot. I like his game. So Rams go with him
I
there.
mean, also 171, 10-second split. That was the highest in this combine.
Yeah, he's athletic and he's really good at the point of attack, a very good pass blocker. He checks a lot of boxes. I wanted him for the Texans, to be honest. You can just slide Titus into left guard and kick Connerly out to right tackle. And then you can do whatever you want with Blake Fisher. But I like his game a lot, especially in that offense.
Sure. Now we move on to Baltimore for Mike. I mean, again, where are you going?
Yeah, I mean, this one took a lot of, thinking through. But when you just look at kind of where things sit for the Baltimore Ravens, you no longer have Matthew Judon, nor do you have Yannick Ngakoue. I mean, I think right here, just in terms of talking about need and potential and, being able to provide pressure from, a defensive lineman position, give me Nick Skirton out of Texas A&M. I think that addresses a major need for them. It's going to shore up shortcomings in that defense. There's a couple different ways I was going to go with this. I had Malachi Starks circled for them because I think secondary is, their inexperience, their age in the secondary did kind of burn them down the stretch. I was looking that way. But, if he's off the board, I don't think you're walking away from getting Nick Skirton at 27 in the first round as thinking, it's some consolation prize. I think he's a very solid defensive edge. And I think could actually provide, down the line, Calais Campbell type pressure and presence on that defense.
So, Mike, what was I know there's plenty of edges still on the board. So why Nick Skirton over James Pierce and Mike Green or an Ezeraku? Is there anything you see in Nick Skirton that's at a higher level than either of those three guys?
Not at a higher level. I also did just kind of think those guys were going to be taken at that point. So, I think it's like a consolation pick for him. Nick Skirton's fine. I'm sure if James Pierce is there, he's gone. But I was just thinking position wise what they need.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. You can go ahead, Drew.
I was going to say this. I'm just dumbfounded. Like this, I'm dumbfounded by like the back end of this draft and like who's still left.
Yeah,
I think it's kind of been
hopefully
the mock.
I can clear up some confusion with the next pick, which feels just obvious at this point. Christian, you mentioned it before. We don't think that James Pierce is going to fall out of the first round of the draft, and I don't think that the Lions are going to pass up on the opportunity to pair arguably the best natural pure pass rusher in this draft in James Pierce and the combine that he had and the production that he had with his measurements. His length, his explosiveness, his first step, it's everything you want out of the pass rusher, being able to pair him with Aiden Hutchinson on either side. I think you have concerns about the run stopping ability, which we discussed in our last mock, but at some point when you're getting here towards the end of the first round and you have a guy that can rush the passer in the way that James Pierce can, you worry about putting on that weight later and you bank on the traits into him possibly becoming one of the best pass rushers in the NFL because he has the talent to do that. And it could be just as easy when he's paired up with Aiden Hutchinson on either side. But
Sure.
yes, he'll need to put on some weight for sure in this draft, or at least through the first couple of years of his career to be able to hold it against the run.
And to that point, Pat, he was at the combine 6'5" and a quarter, 245. So yeah,
he'll need to get heavier for sure.
Yeah.
But put him in Dan Campbell's system and see, watch him grow.
Right. Now on to Mike in Washington. Where do we go from here?
Right now, I mean, just looking at what they're going to need in a life without Jonathan Allen, right now it's looking like Derek Harmon for me, for the Washington Commanders, out of Oregon. It's more so like you have Daron Payne and Johnny Newton. It's someone that is going to beef up a defensive line with a defensive-minded coach. And I don't think you have any worries about the protection that, Jaden Daniels is going to have. Well, I mean, what you need to address is what's happening on the defensive side of the ball. And I think, that helps them out in this instance. But, I mean, there's a million ways it could play out, this late in the draft. But, I think for the value, it's a decent pick.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot. I think, I could totally see him go anywhere as high. I could see him at 22 if Grant is taken,
right,
for sure. So that's good value for in my eyes. He also had a really good combine. One of the few interior defensive linemen to actually participate in all the drills. I think he was the highest graded one to run a 40. Like he was the only guy in the top 6 maybe to run the 40. He ran a 4.95. So I think it's a great pick. He can play a little bit of everywhere, I feel like, on that defensive line. So I don't mind that pick at all. And I could definitely see him go higher. So I like it. So with that, I'll move on to my picking at 30 here for Buffalo. I really don't think he'll be available, but this would be the perfect pick here. I know he can go high. He can go real high, but I feel like that's the guy they would really love, Donovan Ezeraku. I'm not sure if Von Miller comes back, but I think if there was a comp to Von Miller, I think Donovan would be it with the frame. They can definitely use another edge rusher. I know Rousseau and Epinesa are young and talented, but you can never have enough edge rushers. I did think about cornerback here. I do think if Malachi Starks fell to 30, I think you absolutely have to take him at 30. But with the corners that were taken, I just felt like getting the best player available here makes the most sense. So Donovan Ezeraku, I think he can go as high as 19 to Tampa Bay. This is a great pick if he falls here.
Yeah, they'll need to move on from Von Miller eventually being their top pass rushing producer, according to me, in the playoffs. I still think that he brings an edge, especially against the Broncos that you never knew you needed.
Right.
But we'll see. I mean, as Ezeraku, we saw him just blow up this past year, being one of the best pass rushers in the ACC. Produce even at a program like Boston College. If they're able to do that, I think you land one of the top edge rushers in this class, and you obviously just run up to the podium and get it done if you can make it out of this first round without these guys going off the board. Because as Turtle pointed out, it's just crazy how this draft is playing out and seeing which guys are still available at this point. Especially for the Chiefs with my next pick.
Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Chiefs will be running up to the podium to take, if he hadn't gotten injured, who many believe would be the top pure left tackle in this draft, in Josh Simmons. I mean, it's no secret that, it was as clear as day for the entire public to see that they couldn't block for Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. And Juwan Taylor is not the answer. long term at the tackle position. They're going to have to retool and reconfigure based on just what they're paying, what they're going to be paying Trey Smith and why am I blanking on Creed Humphrey, their center in the interior of the offensive line. It's going to be the most expensive interior in the NFL. We saw them move off Tooney to save a little bit of money, but they're going to be able to save a lot of money by putting one of the top. As I said, if he didn't get injured, I mean, the guy didn't allow. I don't think he allowed a pressure the entire first part of the season before he got injured. So I think Josh Simmons, you got the production. He was at a premier program. He was playing in the Big Ten and dominating. He improved every year. Has been able to play on both sides of the offensive line. I think that the Chiefs once again get a steal at the back end of the draft based on his injury history. I don't know that the patellar tendon is going to affect him too long term, but it may keep him out for a little bit to begin his career. But I think that with a team like the Chiefs and the offensive line that he'll be going to, the pieces they already have, he'll be able to grow into it without having too much pressure on him. But then again, he'll be protecting for Patrick Mahomes as their starting left tackle on day one. So there's going to be quite a pressurized situation. But if anybody can handle it, it's a guy who's been consistently improving in a program like Ohio State in Josh Simmons. I think the Chiefs make it easy, and they bank on getting their left tackle of the future.
Yeah, I've seen Josh Simmons mocked way like in the teens and anywhere like floating around the top 10. So,
good pick.
Yeah, that's a Chiefs of the highway robbery, I guess. But
the only thing I will say in kind of, maybe a little, I guess it's kind of pushback, but Josh Simmons, you said it earlier, Turtle. I really don't know about the medical. I mean, you tore your patellar tendon in college. I don't know if you can make it past the second contract just off the injury history. So yeah, a little hesitant. Pat, I was going to ask you any hesitancy at all to maybe think about Tyler Booker here if you had the opportunity here.
Well,
probably not, right?
It's hard with the new development with Joe Tooney being sent out, because obviously they're going to need to address that as well. They're probably going to be looking for a cheaper option than is going to be presented on the free agency market.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that at the end of the day, you're going for the position that you have more of a glaring need at. And I think at this point, it's going to be Josh Simmons on that island with whoever that left guard may be, as opposed to that left guard having Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith playing on the right side of him. So I think it comes down to that in terms of whether you're going tackle or guard. And again, I think Tyler Booker, unfortunately, just kind of struggled with the combine, didn't have the best combine, wasn't able to move quite as well. And unfortunately, that hurt him. I mean, I'm a big Tyler Booker guy. I'm a Roll Tide through and through, but I think the Chiefs try to lock down. They see an opportunity to lock down the tackle position as the more premium position, maybe the most important position outside of quarterback on offense, depending on who you ask. And they recognize that value, and they take that swing in the first round instead of going guard.
Okay.
I love Tyler Booker, though. I was listening to him talk about blitz pickups, and I was like, geez, the Texans could really use a guy who could actually read a stunt, because they did a terrible job at that this year. He's
got a great attitude for sure. I mean, I got football character.
Nick Caserio loves the big school guys, so like that's why I was like, it was so weird to see like Malachi Starks and some of the names that were up here at the back end of the draft, because it's like I personally don't really care that Tyler Booker had a mediocre combine. Like I still think he's going to be a very good NFL guard. So, boy, if we could do trades in the second round, we can get really freaky here at the start of the second.
The board shakes
out this is a big stretch for Mike right here. 3 picks.
Yeah, no, this definitely is, and this is pending a lot of what is going to happen. So right here, if I were the Eagles and you know, I didn't trade for Myles Garrett, it would have been Ezeraku. Right here, 32, that's a steal. So let's assume let's assume they get the trade, they get the edge that they want, someone to complement Jalen Carter. I think it's obvious, just based off the size, arms, ability to take on blockers at pad level, and shoring up. Just you think about some kind of weakness that they have. I mean, a guy like Darius Alexander to fucking plug up the middle for them out of Michigan. I mean, it's right up their alley. And granted, this is barring what's going to happen in free agency. We could very well see Myles Garrett go to the Philadelphia Eagles by tomorrow. But I think right here, you're shoring up your defensive line. I think still giving yourself, the ability to, complement Jalen Carter and address one of the major weaknesses, which was right up the middle on their defense, and put him right beside blanking on the name. Or put him
Jordan Davis.
Jordan Davis. Having him back
Carter
up
are the two guys right now.
I think I don't think
Bill Williams getting a payday too somewhere else, so they're going to need to slot somebody into that rotation.
Yeah, I mean, just with how the board's broken down, I don't think it's a bad pick for him there.
Another guy who ran a 4.95 as a defensive tackle. I mean, that's
right.
That's scooting.
I gotta be honest.
I like Darius Alexander.
I thought you were gonna go Georgia.
I thought
right?
so. Yeah. That's where I thought he was gonna go. Yeah. So Mike,
with Milton Williams gone, I don't mind it. I really don't.
Yeah. Right? Yeah.
So Mike, were you saying that the Eagles are in on Garrett? Is that what you've been seeing?
So I was just looking it up, and someone had just said within the next 48 hours, we're either going to get a DK trade, a Myles Garrett trade, or a James Cook extension. One of the three, they said, will fall in the next 48 hours. So it's pending a lot of stuff that's going on. And
I just don't know if the Eagles have I guess they could trade this pick 32 and then
they have to tack on
their first next year, and
but
interesting. I like Darius Alexander though. I like the pick. I would have thought about Mike Green there too, but that seems like a very Eagles pick as well. But
Mike Green.
I mean, you can't say that they wouldn't go with a small school guy from Toledo when Quinyon Mitchell just went off.
Right.
As a rookie for them this past year as well.